Skal jeg vise deg noe?
Ok.
Hvem er det du snakker med?
Jeg snakker med noen som ikke er her.
Hold den opp.
Hey, Eskil, how are you doing?
I'm fine, just a bit jet lagged.
Jet lagged. Where have you flown from? To America or from America?
To America, but I've been there a couple of days now, but I just woke up this night and couldn't get back to sleep. So that's what jet lag does to you.
Not the best thing for a press day, no?
No, not the best thing. So if you feel I'm low in energy, that's my excuse. But I'll try to answer your questions.
Well, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it, especially with the jet lag and all the traveling you've been through. So, I mean, first of all, congratulations on the film. I was watching it again yesterday, and it's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
I've got two children, are about similar age, so it was. I usually enjoy I enjoyed this film as well, but I usually enjoy without kind of freaking out about kind of seeing kids in these situations. But your film really goes out there a lot more than most films with kind of demon kids, killer kids out there.
How old are your kids?
Well, one's just turned 10, the other's 13, so kind of they're all slightly older. But the 10-year-old, I was thinking about kind of how she's very curious about the world, and this is kind of very, very similar in age to these. So I'm curious about kind of the seed and where you decided to come up with this story that focuses almost entirely on these kind of youngsters running riot in this housing estate.
Running riot. I mean, this will come off as weird, but it comes from becoming a father, having kids, and that doesn't mean my kids are doing what's being done in the movie, and as far as I know, they have no supernatural powers, but it made me curious about childhood, having kids. I mean, I didn't have that kind of nostalgic, constantly referencing my childhood kind of attitude. I was very happy coming of age and becoming an adult, and it was when I had kids I became curious about that time again, and reminded how different it is to be a child. You're living in kind of a parallel universe with very few direct lines of communication to the adult world, because you don't really understand each other.
Yeah.
You are and I want to make something about that secret world of childhood, and I think the idea in the beginning was about the magic of childhood, that could be real, that kids would be playing together and something magical happened that they just went along with, like it was no big deal, and then they go back to their homes and sit down at the dinner table, and that magic isn't there anymore, and you'll think it's their imagination, but I think maybe in the movie that could be real, that magic. And then suddenly they had supernatural powers because I wanted that magic to be real, and then if kids have powers, something bad's going to happen. Kids shouldn't have.
And adults as well, yeah. I mean, that was what happened with Trump, etc. Yeah.
But it's obvious kids shouldn't have the power to inflict a lot of damage.
Yeah.
That's a good thing about nature, is that kids are kind of weak.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it was such a perfect example of curiosity kills the cat. No, I mean, you couldn't have put it better in this film. No. I don't know if that actual scene came from that or not, but
it didn't. Actually, this is on the whole press tour I've done. This is the first time someone had brought that saying up. So.
Brilliant. I mean, the actual, you talk about kind of being the innocence of youth. No, where did kind of this innocence and this kind of curiosity? Where did you get these ideas from? Was it all from your own kind of ideas, or did you, once you kind of got the casts involved, the kids, did you kind of do? I read that you did some kind of workshopping with them. Is that right? To kind of get some idea about how to kind of navigate their innocence in the film?
It was, I mean, most of the content in the movie comes from my imagination, my research, some inspirations here and there. And then when we did the casting, it was very interesting. We did casting for a year. We saw a lot of kids, and one of the things we did with the kids, we showed them like a picture, maybe just a picture of like two kids walking hand in hand in the forest, and we would ask them make up a story
Right.
to see if they had any capacity of imagination, and it revealed a lot of stuff about what kids are thinking about, what they're going through. And it's obvious some kids would make up the darkest stories, and you would think, how are things at home? You know, it was very, very revealing and very interesting. In that process added a layer, I think, of realism in some of those scenes. But the workshopping I did with the actors was mainly preparing them for a shoot, preparing them for the role, preparing them to act, giving them the tools of acting, making them collaborators, making them trust me, making it a pleasurable experience for them to make the movie, and to make it possible for me to express what I want with small child actors, which is difficult.
Egentlig dere gjør på når dere er ute så lenge.
Er du klar?
Hva er det griset her?
Jeg kan få folk til å gjøre ting.
The film showcases kind of like this communication gap that there is between kids and adults now. So I imagine it must have been quite curious to kind of behind the scenes create as much communication as possible while kind of creating exactly the opposite once they had to get in front of the camera, no?
That's very interesting to put it like that. Yes, that was exactly what we were doing. We're trying to find ways of crossing that gap so that we were making sure that they understood what we asked of them, and that they really could do it and feel comfortable about doing it from themselves, you know, trying to find out, do they really want to do this, or is it the parents pushing them to do it on some level? And really needed to get into that and find out by testing them, by doing stuff that demanded patience and things you couldn't really fake. And then we knew, oh, they want to be here, you know, good. Then when we know that kind of communication that comes after, it's much easier when you know that they really, really want to be there and want to do the work because they get something out of it. I have no idea what they get out of it, but they definitely get something out of it. And then we are working with those scenes where the adults don't really understand them. And what's interesting is that the girl on the poster there, her mother in real life plays her mother
and daughter now, yeah.
Yeah, so they would be doing these like scenes where the mother would kind of miss what her daughter is going through and act it out in the most like real way possible, trying to talking the way she would talk to her daughter, but at the same time like not being there for them, not seeing her. And it was very interesting both for her and both for me as a parent to realize that it's so easy to miss something, to not be there at the right time, even if you're well-intentioned, even if you want to. I mean, even if you're a resourceful home, you miss out, you misunderstand, you see what you want to see. You know, it's like that.
Yeah, and something coupled to that, obviously, one of the daughters in the film is she's autistic, and you'd think that the parents were hyper vigilant because of that, no? And even still, they miss even more through that. Was that something that came from the very beginning, or was that something that came along later on? You thought maybe if we add this element to the story, we can kind of even make it more obvious that even parents that you would expect to be even more kind of aware of what's going on are maybe even less aware sometimes.
It came a little bit later. I had the idea of this secret world of childhood, and then I read about this regressive autism that someone calls it, that you have a kid that evolves normally and speaks and communicates and then loses his or her language and retreats like into this autistic bubble. And I just felt, oh, that is scary. That's a horror film for me as a parent. Imagine that, because I mean, if your kid is born nonverbal or like with any disability, I would hope I would just accept that kid as he or she is. But if you kind of feel you're losing your kid, you know, it's a very complicated grief to think that inside.
It's almost like your parents. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's almost like your parents when if they suddenly suffer from kind of dementia or something like that. But you're seeing the same thing happen to your daughter, no, your son. Yeah,
and you just feel like you're losing them, you know, and that becomes very hard to just love that person as they are, because you feel like inside of you are trapped. It's a very strange thing and very tragic thing, difficult thing, and it just haunted me. And at one point I said, well, this has to be part of the film. And I thought, well, what's more closed off and secret than a nonverbal child? So those themes would be even more evident. And of course, it was also create that kind of sibling rivalry, because you have the more demanding child and you have the easy child. So the easy child would be ignored, because that would just happen, you know. And then you also, like you say, you have parents that should be hypervigilant, but also just sometimes just need a break, you know, because it's so hard. So like, okay, could you take your sister for a walk, and you just like sit down and go, you know, because it's so tough to have a disabled child that you need to, it's a full-time job, you know. If you don't have someone helping you, you need to think that it's possible to take a break, you know, and that means sometimes you miss something, sometimes you do a mistake, and hopefully not an important one, which is like, as parents, you do mistakes all the time, and you just hope what you're doing is okay. That end of the day, what you're doing well, it's more important than what you're doing wrong. And if you miss something, it won't be of huge consequence, but you know you're failing all the time, you know?
Mamma, vad är det som jag känner?
Obviously, you worked with children. Most of them are children, but at the same time, what was very curious, I was reading the press notes, I think it was, that you were very insistent on having the camera or the cinematography kind of help us to kind of feel like one of those another kid in the same kind of group of peers. No, was that from the very word go, or did you kind of start to film and you realize that maybe the audience might get pulled out a bit, and you decided to take a different approach?
It was from the very beginning, because I think what was my first impulse was to make a movie about childhood,
right?
And the second impulse, from various reasons, was that it was going to be quite scary. But I didn't want that second impulse to kind of take the lead on everything. I wanted the movie to be full of sunshine, and you feel that the kids have these healthy skin tones, and they live in a tactile world where they're touching stuff and experience the world, and they have moments of happiness, and it's not that scared of the dark kind of black and white horror kind of thing, which where you just try to make everything uncomfortable, you know. I wanted you to feel that you're there with the kids, and you invest feelings in them, and you might even remember small stuff from your own childhood, like you see a girl picking at the scab and eating it. You will probably, you've done that yourself at one point as a child, and maybe you haven't thought about that in a long time. So suddenly you get a feeling of how it is to be a kid, and suddenly you're projecting that into the movie, and then you are participating in a much deeper way, I think, than you usually do in movies, and especially scary movies.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's not a huge amount of special effects, but there are special effects in there. So the idea of you kind of filming as much as possible in broad daylight was laying down quite a huge gauntlet, as well as working with kids at the same time. Yeah.
It's also like I knew it was going to take place in the summer, because I mean, there's something about childhood and summer, and also plot-wise, they're moving to a new place in the summertime, so a lot of people are away on vacation. So that's kind of the mood of the story, that it's kind of empty. But I knew in the Scandinavian summers, the sun will set at 10 p.m., you know, in Oslo. So there won't be much night because the kids would go to bed way before that. So then we had to find other ways to make it unsettling and prepare people for the stuff that's going to come down the line, because it's obviously not a nostalgic, happy childhood tale, you know. It's more complicated than that. So we tried to make it get unsettling by playing with that emptiness, the abandoned playgrounds, the empty spaces, the sound design, and just make it more subtly unsettling than just the fear of the dark thing, which works every time. You know, it's just a primal thing, fear of the dark. You even the worst made horror movie, you will feel something when the lights go out and people go down in the basement. You know, it's it's terrible. But we had to do it in other ways. But hopefully, if we manage to get people unsettled and scared in a more subtle way, it will be more nonstop, because there's not that moment when the sun comes up and you go, "Oh, the vampires! I go to bed now." You know, it's the danger will always be there. You know?
Yeah, no, I definitely felt that. I mean, especially some of the kind of more drawn out moments when they're using these powers really kind of are more effective because they are so drawn out, and you're kind of almost Hitchcockian and building up the suspense. Now, what's actually going to happen?
Oh, thank you. That's a huge compliment. Bring up Hitchcock. Thank you.
But we're out of time, so I'll finish with that huge compliment for you. I thanks very much for speaking to me. I wish you the best of luck with the film when it comes out shortly, and I hope to get to speak to you again sometime soon about another project. I
would love to. Really nice talking to you, and thanks for
nice to talk to you too.
Talking about the movie.
Yep. All right. Get some sleep later on, eh? Okay.
I will.
Take care. All right. Take care of yourself. Bye then.
Hva var det som skjedde egentlig?
Vi lekte på nytt.